Who's talking to us on 22422. I'll be reading your SMSs shortly, but now I want to update you on some breaking news. We have actually two updates. First things first, we have just received information that the High Court has suspended the bankruptcy notice against presidential candidate Cyrus Jirongo and directed him to file a defense within 2 weeks. Let me read that again. The High Court has suspended a bankruptcy notice against presidential candidate Cyrus Jirongo and directed him to file a defense within 2 weeks. Remember, there had been a lot of speculation on the legality of having his name on the ballot papers come the October 26 poll, but the High Court has now suspended the bankruptcy notice that had been issued against him, and he has now the opportunity within 2 weeks to give his defense in regards to that, seeming like, and of course we'll allow the lawyers to interpret this, but for all intents and purposes it now looks like his name having been on the ballot paper on the 26th of October, that there will be no one who can contest that because the High Court has suspended the bankruptcy notice against him. In another update now from Kisumu County, we've also been informed that the Director of Public Prosecution has directed Kisumu Senator Fred Outa and former Deputy Governor Ruth Odinga be charged with electoral offences over disruption of IEBC training in Kisumu. This happened last week. Once again, the DPP has directed that Kisumu Senator Fred Outa and former Deputy Governor Ruth Odinga be charged with electoral offences over the disruption of IEBC training. This happened in Kisumu last week. That is news just in. We'll be linking up with our correspondent in Kisumu County for that update. We'll also be talking to Zuya Walter, who is at the courts, to also give us this update regarding presidential candidate Cyrus Jirongo. Remember, we're also monitoring the situation in Kwale County, Ukunda, where residents are demonstrating as we speak, stating that they are unhappy with the current political stalemate. It is affecting their business. This is in regards to tourism, a key income earner for that part of the country, and they feel that the political environment that we are in is bad for their business, and they'd like its quick resolution so that they can get back to business. Do we have some of those live images? If not, we'll be going back to Kwale County shortly for that particular update. We have Nikki Gitonga live from Kwale County. Maybe you can give us an update now. What is happening in Kwale, Nikki? What's the latest? What can you tell us about that particular demonstration?
Waiga Mwaura, I'm getting you live from Kwale County at Ukunda town. This is a hub of tourist destination. It was voted for a consecutive time by the international organization as a tourist destination. Today, the residents of Kwale County, they had a peaceful walk to ensure that Kwale residents have they'll have an experience of before and after the 2026 repeat poll. The resident demonstration comes a day after yesterday. They alleged that they were thoroughly beaten by the police. Police who were searching for the firearms. So basically, the peaceful walk we are having today is to ensure that the resident will have peace before and after the general election. We also know that Kwale County as a whole is a NASA zone, so we are yet to see if the residents are going to participate in the coming polls. We know that the last Mashujaa day, the Kwale County governor warned NASA supporters against disrupting the polls, but some of the members of parliament who were elected on a NASA ticket, led by the chair of the member of parliament from Sambweni, Sleman Dor, insisted yesterday on a peaceful meeting that actually the residents here will not participate in the polls. But the residents here have called upon, led by the community organization, that they will actually, those who want to participate in election, they can go ahead and participate, and who do not want to participate, they can stay at their home without disrupting any businesses. We also managed to get some of the information. Actually, some of the hotels, they've been hard hit by the political temperatures that have risen in the country. Some of the tourists have cancelled their bookings to travel in Diani. So what the peaceful walk today we are having, it has brought together members of the public, the security organs, and even the church leaders to ensure that we have a peaceful election before and after. That's all we have from Kwale County, Waiga Maura.
Nikki Gitonga for that update, just letting us know why residents of that county have decided to hold peaceful demos today and what their key issues are. From Kwale County, we cross over to Kisumu County now, where Laura Otieno is on standby to give us an update regarding this breaking news, as I mentioned to you earlier, and that information that you're seeing scrolling on your screen. The DPP has directed that Kisumu Senator Fred Outa and former Deputy Governor Ruth Odinga be charged with electoral offences over disruption of IEBC training in Kisumu last week. Laura now joins us for an update. Laura, just give us a brief summary of what happened last week when IEBC was conducting training there, and then what this information now means. What can you tell us, Laura? Laura Otieno, if you can hear me, maybe you can take us back to the events of last week. Give us a summary of what happened in Kisumu last week in regards to IEBC training and the disruption of those training programs that were carried out there. Okay, we seem to have a problem getting Laura on the line. I will come back to her shortly, but I want to get the opinion of my panel here on what Nikki Gitonga has had to talk about Kwale County, a situation where on one hand you've got Jubilee supporters, NASA supporters there, one group saying we want to vote, it's our democratic right, another group saying there will be no election on October 26th. Let me start with you, Dr. Barua. The Electoral Commission is actually set to meet today, and one of the things that they will be discussing is how to handle the repeat presidential election in certain counties. Mr. Chebukati has hinted at invoking Section 55 of the Elections Act, which gives the Commission leeway to push forward voting in parts of the country, provided that a new voting date is announced within 7 days. Is this a realistic proposal in your view? We're talking about counties where we have seen certain issues: Kisumu, Siaya, Vihiga, Migori, Homa Bay. We've already seen issues with IEBC staff; they're not able to carry out their training there. What would you say about that?
I think what you need to do is, first of all, to know that the Electoral Commission is preparing for a repeat election, and we assume that this election be held across the country. So it means that if there will be some sort of scenarios that does not allow vote to take place in some cases, in some counties, then that will be handled on a county-to-county basis. At this particular moment, I think it's good for us to it's not good for us to preempt that there will be no voting in Vihiga or Kwale and so forth. The assumption is there will be voting all over. If there are some activities like violence, acts of violence, which maybe prevent a good election take place, Chebukati can invoke that section and postpone the election of those particular areas for a later day where the situation will be much better. What should happen? The number of counties in which elections are postponed are not really, even if they were to vote 100%, do not change the outcome of the results, then Chebukati can make a decision. So I think it's good. The best scenario for this country is whereby everybody votes, but if some cases will come of violence and stop people from voting, then the relevant section of the law will be applied. But you see now, some natural disasters like earthquakes, if they happen, that you can understand. When you get some people like from ODM and ANC trying to disrupt the election, trying to suppress people's rights, that is like is a crime in itself. So those things should not be tolerated, and I think the government should be able to give protection to people who are willing to vote within those areas, so that their rights are not infringed on as well. Okay,
fair enough. Barak, I'm coming to you, but first let's cross over to the High Court now, where the High Court has suspended a bankruptcy notice against presidential candidate Cyrus Jirongo and directed him to file a defense within 2 weeks. To give us an update on how matters played out at the courts today, we are now joined by Zuya Walter. Zuya Walter, good morning. Kindly give us the final details of this case, the matter of the presidential candidate Cyrus Jirongo, and what this now means with the High Court having suspended his bankruptcy notice and directed him to file a defense within 2 weeks.
Well, thank you very much, Wahika. And I'm at Milimani Law Court, and indeed Justice Olga Sere of the High Court has suspended the bankruptcy notice that was issued a week ago to presidential candidate Cyrus Jirongo, therefore paving way for him to enable him to contest in the fresh presidential election that is set for 26. Remember that the High Court has given the orders, and therefore that led to Jirongo moving to the High Court to challenge the notice. According to Cyrus Jirongo, he argued that President Uhuru Kenyatta, together with Deputy President William Ruto, participated in the 2013 general election despite their indictments for crimes against humanity at the ICC, and therefore he wanted the notice to be set aside so to enable him to contest in the election that is set for in 3 days. Wahiga?
That is, so did the judge, as he was reading and suspending the notice, is that what he said is the reason why he's come to that decision?
The judge just read the ruling, and he said that he will hear the matter, the whole application, once he files his defense. But for now, the judge said that let me just set aside the ruling, my ruling. Then once I hear the parties in the case, I'll give out my final orders in the.
Okay, thank you so much, Zia Walter, for just helping us to clarify what has happened at the High Court today. What we know, the High Court has suspended a bankruptcy notice against presidential candidate Cyrus Jirongo, paving the way for him to be a candidate, a presidential candidate in the upcoming October 26 poll. He also has to file his defense within 2 weeks. Barak, I know you might want to talk about that, but let's not throw off the discussion that we were talking about a bit earlier. And I had sought to find out if we see situations where some cases of violence might break out in parts of the country. Wafula Chebukati has hinted that potentially invoking Section 55 of the Elections Act is postponing the poll in certain areas realistic.
You see, all these things have got to be seen in context. In fact, they are not isolated matters as such. Jirongo's bankruptcy now, then the order suspended the next day, the prayer meetings in Nakuru, the police in trucks, as we have seen, the Chebukati statements, the Akombe resignation and her statement, the things which we have been hearing that somewhere in Ruaraka some people are preparing also to defend the election, and I don't know the validity or lack of it, but yesterday there was a lot of talk about Lucky Estate, Lucky Summer in Ruaraka. All these things, they boil down to a very traumatizing game of musical chairs and suckers, that eventually we need to agree that the climate, the environment is wrong. Whether it is Akombe who, as we have been told, has abdicated her responsibilities, where some people are saying he has betrayed the country, whether it is Chebukati who is being pronounced as very weak, whether it is believed wrongly so that NASA is going to disrupt elections. All these things call for some level of sobriety, and the best way forward is to get back to the Supreme Court led by Chebukati, and Chebukati should tell the judges of the Supreme Court that you gave us an order to go out and conduct a free, fair, credible election in strict adherence to the Constitution, the election laws, regulations, and other instruments that go with that. But in our own estimation, we don't think we can deliver. Give us guidance. That way we are operating within the ambit of the law. But it does appear that we are determined to carry on, and I'm not aware personally that there are any plans anywhere to stop people from participating in this exercise, which we have concluded and stated already very clearly that it is a farce. We cannot stop people from participating in a farce. We cannot stop people from participating in a choreography, because it's a game of musical chairs. So it's completely left to the pre-election of Chebukati and IEBC and Jubilee to decide what they want to do about this. If they decide that they want to suspend this exercise in some parts of the country, it is up to them. If they decide that they want to go on, the pre-election remains completely with them, because as we have said, we're not recognizing this as an election, and therefore we cannot interfere with it.
Okay. Netangule,
yes,
now.
Maura, there is a difference. I think we need to get this clear, that
if a particular party decides to boycott the election and say we are not participating in this election, that particular party then cannot at the same hand disrupt the election. You know, there is a distinction in those two. It is your right not to participate, but you cannot disrupt, because then if you disrupt the election by way of violence and then you call the election a farce, then that's criminal in nature. And that's why I advise that election is not about IEBC alone. Election involves other stakeholders. The security agencies have a duty to provide security infrastructure for the IEBC. The politicians as well have a duty to uphold peace in this election. They cannot preach violence. They cannot cause a situation where people fight or damage election materials and then turn around and say that election was a farce. Those two cannot work. So I think it's in order for the DPP to take action against certain politicians who instigate violence. I think it's appropriate that they do it now, because that is the right thing to do.
If you were in Chebukati's shoes right now,
yeah,
how would you handle the many issues that still await the IEBC between now and Thursday? Would you be thinking about, invoking the Section 55 of the Elections Act? Would you still be looking for President Uhuru Kenyatta and NASA leader Raila Odinga trying to see if you can get a last-minute solution? What would you be doing?
I think if I were in Chebukati, first you need to be very firm, because that job of the IEBC chair is not for the weak-hearted.
If you have not been firm for 7 months, can you be firm in 4 days?
We will try to pray for him to be firm. Because, by the way, there have been so many fears about this chairman, whether he can pull it out. In fact, there is a lot of fear whether he will go all the way.
Do you think he'll go all the way?
I have a lot of fears also.
We might not make it to Thursday.
Yeah, we have a lot of fears. But we're just praying that he makes it. Because sometimes he comes out so strongly and says, I cannot allow the country to fall under my watch. Then the next day he says, I don't see this election. So, the job of a chairman of IEBC, first, is like a music, what these people will lead a choir. Conductor. You are supposed to conduct your choir within your commissioners to bring consensus and to bring unity. But if at the same time, you the chair, you are saying, my commissioners are what is he saying? Outvoting me all the time. There is a difference between being outvoted and standing by the truth and the law. Your commissioners can outvote you, but what is the law? Yeah. So the point I'm making is this. We are praying for Chebukati to stand firm. And invoking Section 55 of the Election Act, it should be a last-minute issue. It's not something we invoke before the event.
Exactly.
Let election preparation take place.
Yes.
As I said, for the election to be credible, the infrastructure must also be credible. In other words, you cannot tell me that there is no election in Kisumu, yet there is election in Kisumu, yet you have not put in the materials in each polling station. So that way the election becomes a sham. So the IEBC, the security agencies must ensure the infrastructure is there. It's just one election. Honestly, I've been in IEBC. This election is so simple.
It is manageable.
It's so manageable.
There's a viewer here who has a different opinion. Duncan from Naivasha says, we have never disagreed if there will be Christmas or no Christmas. It's not an issue. 25th of December, no matter what religion you come from, you say it's Christmas, but you might celebrate it in different ways. But if we differ on a single day of having election or not, why can't we think about the repercussions of our differences? And within the next 72 hours, seek interpretation of the Supreme Court on the legitimacy of having it or not. Mark you, better late than never.
My take on that...
you're taking Lillian's time, but so you better be brief.
Fine. My take is that, this IEBC now has become so timid that they are not sure if we do this. Like now, the other day they went to say, if there is a discrepancy of results, what are we supposed to do? And the Supreme Court told them, no, you cannot change it.
They almost tell them mysterious.
It's like now they want to be managed by the Supreme Court, and that is very wrong. Because it is clear from the law that IEBC, and by the please, it is not a laughing matter. It is clear from the laws, even in the Constitution, that IEBC is not supposed to be under the direction of any body or institution. They are supposed, they have the Constitution, they have the election laws, they have the IEBC Act. All those laws and regulations tell them what to do. But now, a lot of fear has been instilled in them that they are rushing all the way to the Supreme Court, all the way. Will they cancel our result? Let us ask them, what is the right thing to do? And I think that fear should get out of them very fast.
Fair enough. Million?
Yeah, I was just going to add and agree with Letangule that the issues of conflict in elections, as I said earlier, are always rife. And giving an example of 2013 and the build-up to the election then, we had threats of the MRC at the coast. A lot of parts in the coastal region, and in particular Kwale and other parts of Lamu, were really inaccessible, but we made sure our staff were there on election day and elections were held. The same thing applied to some sections in the northeastern where there were threats of Al-Shabaab. So you see, the issues of violence, threats to security are always there when it comes to the electoral process. So they should look at the Constitution. One of the general principles is that the election shall be free of violence and intimidation. Whereas we might laud him now for having made that announcement, that he may resort to that. And that is trying to ensure that, you know, people remember that he has the weapon, he has the law, and he has the Constitution with him. That in case we degenerate to that level, he can invoke the law and ensure the election is held in a conducive environment.
So you feel that he still has the opportunity to take charge at this time?
Because the law gives him that opportunity.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Baru, I'm coming to you shortly, but before that, we want to cross over to Kisumu County. We'll be crossing over there shortly, and as soon as Laura is on standby. I'm told she's on standby now to give us an update regarding the situation there. As we mentioned earlier, the DPP has directed that Kisumu Senator Fred Outa and former Deputy Governor Ruth Odinga be charged with electoral offences over disruption of IEBC training in Kisumu last week. Laura, good morning. Maybe kindly walk us through the events of last week and, of course, the implication of this order by the DPP.
Yes, thank you very much, Wahiga, and a very good morning to you back at the Communications Center. And indeed, last week we had the disruption of IEBC trainings here in the county. The first one, of course, occurred in Awasi, and then another one we had witnessed Prosperity House, where is the building where the governor's offices are located. There was also a disruption of an IEBC meeting, and indeed, as we were there, we had sent pictures, of course, of that disruption. And Senator Fred Outa and Ruth Odinga were there, or we sent pictures of them basically involved in that disruption. And Wahiga, what happened last week is what the leaders themselves had come out very strongly to say that they will oppose IEBC activities, of course, all rallying support behind NASA presidential flag bearer Raila Odinga, saying that the presidential aspirant had called for no elections in this area, and therefore they had vowed to make sure that no training occurs in this place, and therefore consequently no election to be held around this place. And now following that, we understand that the CID boss had already launched an investigation, as of course the regional commissioner had spoken that day last week, saying that they are going to conduct investigations and ensure that the culprits of that disruption will be brought to book. And of course today we are seeing the manifestation of that. We understand that the CID boss in this area had actually sent a file to the Director of Public Prosecutions with a compilation of what of the investigations, or rather the findings of the investigations of that disruption. And we understand that four people will be charged, two of them being former Deputy Governor Ruth Odinga, the current Senator Fred Outa, and alongside two others. We understand that one is an MCA, Kondele MCA, who yesterday we received reports of him being arrested. Of course, that is a developing story we will be following up, but Generally, Wahiga, if I could tell you, the leaders had come out very strongly saying that they will not be taking part in the elections, and they had vowed to disrupt IEBC trainings. We understand that from that disruption that they took part in, they moved. They had wanted to go to Nyamasaria area where another training was underway, but we understand that training was successful, of course, under heavy security surveillance from the police force. And we understand that they're being charged with 4 counts. One of them, of course, is malicious destruction of property. Another one is accessing a restricted area. Of course, they're saying that the area where the IEBC officials were supposed to be trained was a restricted area for authorized personnel only. So, of course, that is another count they'll be facing. And also assaulting one of the trainers in that place. There was a woman there who was harassed left, right. She was thrown left and right, of course, in the course of that scuffle. We understand that the counts are 4 in general, and what the reports we're receiving is that they will be charged at the Kericho Law Court. So, of course, that is a developing story that we will be following up, and, of course, be bringing you up to speed with up-to-the-minute update from this area. Wahiga.
Laura, I know it might be a bit early to ask you this, but have you gotten any responses from the Kisumu Senator, Fred Outa, or the former Deputy Governor, Ruth Odinga? Have they responded to that announcement by the DPP? Have any of their teams, given you some sort of response?
Well, Wahiga, what I can tell you is right from last week, we were trying to get in touch with the senator and the former deputy governor rather, and their phones have been off. We're trying to get to their teams. Of course, last week the response we were seeking from them is what exactly they're going to do, or rather they're going to carry out themselves. As the regional commissioner on that very day had made it very clear that they're going to be arrested. The regional commissioner had said that it was the mandate of the police to be providing security to any institution that wishes to exercise its constitutional mandate, and IEBC being one of those institutions, we understand that the regional commissioner had said that they must be arrested and they must be charged, of course, following suit. He had made us understand that in accordance to the Awasi disruption, 10 people had been arrested, and other people arrested in some parts of Nyanza with various offences, but all in one basket of electoral offences. So we had tried to look for them since last week, but up to now we have not yet contacted them. But of course now we'll be beefing up our efforts, of course, to try and get to them and basically hear what they have to say, and not only the 2, but of course also another, of course we'll be talking to other leaders. Of course the governor, we understand that he is supposed to be meeting with the Red Cross officials. We'll be trying to hijack him and basically trying to get his comment on that, because on that very day of disruption he also came out very strongly himself and the deputy governor saying that elections will not be held in this place. We'll be trying to get in touch not only with the 2, but of course with another host of local leaders, basically to get their comment on what they think about the report filed by the DPP.
And finally, Laura, we're hearing that in certain parts of the country, the IEBC has changed their strategy on how they are preparing for the repeat poll. We're told, like in places like Kisumu, they have decided instead of having those sort of public training sessions, that they're having smaller, more informal sort of training sessions with fewer, IEBC clerks and returning officers. Do you know anything about that? It was reported in certain sections of the media.
Yes, Wahiga, it's indeed true. The IEBC has sort of changed tact. Of course, we're trying to talk to the county returning officer, Mr. John Cox, but he's a bit adamant to talk to the media. But our own investigations have revealed to us that the IEBC is changing tact. They are conducting their trainings in very isolated areas, of course, with very minimal contact. Their trainings are not as publicized as they were before the August 8th polls. They're sort of trying to tone down on their advertisement, or rather their gazettement of that training. But we understand that in certain places, in certain sporadic places, the trainings have occurred, but of course it was under heavy police surveillance. Of course the security was beefed up in those areas, true to the word of the regional commissioner. He really beefed up security to ensure that those trainings take place. But all in all, the mood on the ground is still the same, Wahiga. They're still waiting for Raila Odinga's announcement. Of course, he said he's going to make a grand announcement on the 25th. So the trainings are conducted in a very high-profile security areas, and we are all waiting to see what goes down on the 25th and consequently on the 26th of October.
Thank you so much, Laura Otieno, giving us the latest update from Kisumu County, just letting us know exactly what is happening there in regards to just some breaking news that we've been updating you on throughout the course of the last 30 minutes or so. Barak Muluka, of course, you've had a chance to listen to what Laura has had to say. First things first, and any hint, because I know your other hat is as a political analyst, to what we can expect to hear from NASA leader Raila Odinga on Wednesday, the nation keenly waiting. Do you have any? I've heard of the use of crystal ball, terminology. What does the crystal ball tell us about Wednesday?
Of course, I have already allusively spoken to some of this, and Raila Odinga himself has spoken about Thursday. He has been very clear that nobody should interfere with anybody. He restated that yesterday. Those who are going through what they are calling training of election officials should be left free to carry on with that, because as I have stated, and Mheshimiwa Letangule here does not agree with me about a fast. A fast does not develop out of disruption. It develops out of the environment that is ruling this thing from the organizing center, where the owners are saying that we can't do the right thing. And because of that, people have been instructed very clearly, leave them alone. Those who want to go on and do their thing, allow them that space to go on and do their thing, because that thing which they are doing, we are not recognizing as an election. Why do you want to disrupt them? Allow them to carry on. And I think there's also over-dramatization of the whole thing, without attempting to belittle what happened in Awasi and in Kisumu. That there are well over several thousands of polling stations. You cannot use one incident and say that this area is now dangerous. That is profiling an area for possible assault. And we have seen what has been happening in the streets of Kisumu, even when people are just peacefully marching in the streets, as the law allows them to do. Someone comes with a vehicle and drives right through them, and as this person is driving right through the crowd, obviously with the intention to do harm, another one is lobbing canisters, tear gas canisters. Another one is accosting nursery school children and saying that this area is violent, it is unsafe. It is profiling an area, a population, a community with sinister motives.
That is what you see?
Yes.
We've spent a lot of the last hour or so talking about between today and Thursday. So let's look at Thursday. Let's imagine an election happens in parts of the country. Again, I don't know what will happen. I'm not a prophet, so to speak. And a winner will be announced some days after that. And what we know for sure is that NASA leader Raila Odinga's name will not be on that name, declared as the winner, because he says he's not participating. How does NASA envision the environment after October 26th? What does NASA see as the way forward? Should the election take place? Should nothing change between now and Thursday?
Of course, this exercise will go on. We said that a number of times before. I have written about it. It will go on. President Kenyatta will be declared winner with upwards of 90%, maybe 99%. In other words, we are starting to...
Are you agreeing with him, or you are countering? Okay,
I know that there are efforts to cause it to look like Raila Odinga was also voted for, and these are Jubilee efforts. We saw Governor Anne Waiguru, who these days puts on military fatigues, stating fully in her combat uniform that Raila Odinga's name would be on the ballot paper, whether he likes it or not. And just wondering, and we have all wondered why that should be in the interest of Jubilee, that Raila Odinga's name is on the ballot paper, whether he likes it or not. And so after Uhuru Kenyatta is declared president with upwards of 99%.
What happens next? should we agree with your hypothesis? What happens next?
What happens next will follow. I don't have the powers of a Jewish prophet or rabbi, but within the context of law and what the law permits, situation will unfold, and whatever unfolds will be within the framework of law and order and the Constitution, as my brother here likes saying.
Okay. There's something interesting you raised that I want to bring to Commissioner Letangule.
Yes.
Form 24A.
Yes.
Help us get to the bottom of the matter there. Because
the
on one side,
resignation.
The one for resignation.
Yeah.
Because on one side, some legal experts say, if you don't sign that form, you haven't formally resigned. But the others who say that it is your constitutional right to resign whichever way you would want to resign, that as long as you've written a letter, and that letter you've certified is in your handwriting, it is your wish, then no one can stand up against you. How do we find a way?
My own take is that form contemplates a situation of where there are nominations, and within 3 days, if you don't wish to be in the ballot, then you sign the form. But in this situation, an election ordered under Article 140, there was no nomination. So really, to ask a candidate to sign the form is not there, because that's not the scenario in this system.
So why is Raila Odinga's name still on the ballot paper?
Because I think this was an election ordered by the Supreme Court, and in terms of that article of the law, then it means, and that's why there have been no nomination. So the candidates who participated in the earlier election are deemed to continue, and that has been buttressed by the ruling in the Our Court case that all those candidates will participate. So whether you want now to resign again, the law is grey. So I think the IEBC made a ruling.
And that was actually my question to you was, if you were in the IEBC now, would you have said, you know what, team, to avoid an legal issue later, should we remove?
I think if I were there, I would have advised that now that this issue has risen and the candidate has written a letter to us, that should be sufficient enough. But then in their wisdom, I don't want to say lack of it, in their wisdom, they have decided the candidate is in. And as it is now, the candidate is there. Raila is there in terms of the fresh election. Whether people, and by the way, there will be people who will vote for him. Because, you know, Raila has a serious following. I will not rule out.
Even though he has said no elections, do you think there are people who still go?
I think there will be people in other areas, they will still vote for him. Even those few who will turn up in those areas that are deemed to be no elections areas, the one person, the two person, they will vote for him. So I will not be surprised that even though Raila has boycotted the election, he will garner more votes than those guys now who are there. the other guys combined.
Okay, Lilian, let me come to you for your take. Again, you can weigh in on what he's talked about, the issue of resignation or withdrawal rather, by NASA leader Raila Odinga.
I think a reading of the law to me should not lead us any other way other than what Letangule has explained, that the Supreme Court made an order for an election under Article 140 sub-Article 3. The nominations for this invalidation or this invalidated elections happened long before, 90 days before the 8th of August. So there is that presumption that all the way, if you look at Article 138 up to 140, it is the presumption that all the candidates who are on the ballot on the 8th of August should be the ones in the repeat elections. Because Form 24A, which is in the Elections Act under the regulations, requires one. If you want to withdraw and your party has nominated you, you should do that through that prescribed form within 3 days. And if you don't do so, then it is deemed that you're in the race. So now that we are going under Article 143, then it is also presumed that Raila is in the race.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would agree with that.
So you'd agree with, okay.
Yes.
Dr. Barua?
I think this is a grey area. And what some people are arguing, including myself, is that the day the Gazette notice was placed saying that Raila, Uhuru, Kenyatta will be in the ballot.
That was on 5th of September, I believe.
5th of September. That could have been presumed to be the nomination day. So somebody who would not wish to continue being in the ballot would have been forced to resign within the next 3 days. and hence signing Form 24A. So I think that 5th of September to us or to me is a nomination day, and by 8th, Raila could have, if he didn't want to participate, he could have actually resigned and signed Form 24A. So as it is now...
Okay, so you think he should have signed Form 24A even though the commissioner...
So. Yeah, because the law is there. And
but they are giving a different interpretation.
It's in their right to do that. But I'm saying that's my interpretation.
That's your interpretation.
Yeah, and I'm also have my right. The other thing which has been mentioned here by my colleagues, I didn't have a chance to respond, is that my friend Ryan says that 2013 they even had serious threats from MRC. And Al-Shabaab, and they were able to maneuver through it. Right now, the threat we have to this January, these repeat elections, are the people who are boycotting. Which is a very interesting thing, that the people who are boycotting the elections are the ones who are threatening the existence of the same election. So if the election is a farce, as Barack puts it, why should NASA have an interest of sabotaging it? So I think what they should do is, don't vote if you don't have to. Let the people who want to vote, vote. Let the one who is going to win be declared president of this country.
Okay. Although in all fairness, National leader Raila Odinga has told his supporters not to disrupt those who would like to vote. I know Wahiga. That's a disclaimer from Raila Odinga. Oh, you don't... It's a disclaimer so that they can say, I told them. This is politics. He has told people to go to the streets. Tomorrow? Starting tomorrow? Wednesday, and there are no mechanisms of maintaining peace. And you see, there's no precedent whereby these people in the opposition have demonstrated, even the previous governments, it's not even NASA, demonstrated peacefully without causing destructions. So I believe, and you're going to see it tomorrow, these NASAites are going to demonstrate as instructed, and they cause a lot of damage, which may even be loss of life. The other day we saw them stealing sodas in town. You know? Are those NASA supporters or those are those are NASA supporters, because just a minute, Jubilee supporters are on the streets. NASAites are in the streets. Okay? They are the ones who stole sodas and ugali and they joined themselves. So what I'm saying is that if Raila is going to try to go to the streets, let him have mechanism of maintaining peace. If he does not know how to maintain peace, if he doesn't have the capacity, which I assume he doesn't have, let him not stop or try to criminalize the security forces when they come in to contain a bad situation. That's why it is. You have disarmed Barack Muluka with... No, he's my friend. He's not in a position to respond while he gathers himself. News that we are following up, Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i is addressing heads of county security and intelligence committees at the Kenya School of Government on security preparedness for the fresh presidential election. As soon as we have that function, we'll be bringing it to you. But what we know for now is Acting Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i will address heads of county security and intelligence committees on security preparedness for the fresh presidential elections. As soon as they are ready to give us that update, then we will be able to bring you those live images. Remember also, of course, one word that has really been talked about over the last couple of weeks is the word dialogue. And President Uhuru Kenyatta, NASA leader Raila Odinga also spoke about dialogue and whether they are for it, against it, what they think about the term dialogue. Let's listen a little bit just to what they had to say before I give Barack Muluka a chance to weigh in on this discussion.
Are you willing to talk to Raila Odinga, the NASA presidential candidate, before Thursday in a bid to quell tensions?
I put it to you this way. The decision belongs to the people of Kenya. And all I want is the ability of the people of the Republic of Kenya to make their choice. And once they've made their choice, because they are choosing between two different platforms. A NASA platform that has its agenda and a Jubilee platform that has its agenda and policies. I believe that the most important hurdle we need to overcome is the people of Kenya to make a decision between these two platforms. Now once that's done, right, whoever wins has a responsibility to know that you carry not just your supporters but the whole country, and to be able to address yourself to the issues that both your supporters and those who don't support you have raised, right? But the most important thing in any democratic nation is that the choice must first belong to the people. And that is why our constitution says that sovereign power resides not in Uhuru Kenyatta, not in Raila Odinga, but in the people of the Republic of Kenya.
Lakini kama wewe unasimama leo unasema hii, kile unasema hii, Raila ongea na Uhuru, naona ngoja nini na Uhuru? Uhuru unajimuna kila siku anapiga kifua ati Raila anataka nusu mkati kwake. Mnafikiri mimi naweza kwenda kama mkati kwa Uhuru? Uhuru amechukua mkati yangu, alafu nasema niende nimuombe yeye. Hii vita ni ya Wakenya, kwa sababu tunataka tuhakikishe kwamba yule mtoto anazaliwa hapa kimini akitaka kuwa rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya, kura zake zisiibiwe.
Well, there we go. That's a little bit about what our leaders had to say about the topic of dialogue over the weekend. President Uhuru Kenyatta stating that the supreme will of the people must be expressed at the ballot box before any other matters can be discussed. But for the NASA team led by Raila Odinga, they are stating that should this election be all-inclusive, then some form of dialogue should have taken place. But I think NASA also saying right now it's a bit late. They've given Jubilee enough time to have dialogue, and they say, you know what, Jubilee, come what may, you go ahead and have that election. And then NASA said that they'll give their position, the way forward, this coming Wednesday. But let me come to you. When Pope Francis has to weigh in on Kenya's matters, when he tells tourists and those who had gone for prayers yesterday that he's praying, he's concerned about our nation. He's saying that he's praying that constructive dialogue can take place for the good of the people. What do you read in such a statement when a man of his caliber, of his stature, weighs in on this East African nation?
That these grave issues, and I mean grave in the broadest sense, interpretation of graveness, gravity, that we are treating grave issues with levity. That when we talk about dialogue, it's not a dialogue about who wants to share in whose loaf. It's a dialogue that prepares an environment that gives Kenyans a credible election, such as President Uhuru Kenyatta is talking about, that the sovereignty of the people is paramount, that you must create conditions, circumstances and environments and processes that give you an outcome that you can then say that this outcome represents the will of the people, the common will. That after that, the people enter into a social contract with the person who has been willed to be the head of state in the government. But if you create an environment that is ambiguous, that even the conductors themselves have doubt in, then you can no longer say that this is the will of the people. That when you see the cabinet secretary who is in charge of national security going back to his own backyard and telling people in Ekegusi, and I understand Ekegusi very well because I was privileged to go to Cardinal Lotunga High School, which is squarely in Nikisi, and I learned the language which I speak, understand, and the CS is telling the population there that this is the home of Chingororo. Chingororo na Machuma. We know what they are. And this is a proscribed movement. It's not being alarmist. He is on record as having said that. And there's a lot of denial, conveniently, that when we talk about things like the law and its interpretation, we are talking about presumptions. There can be 45 million presumptions, and these presumptions are being made conveniently. Don't we need to pause and say to ourselves, wait a minute, could we be going down the cliff? We spoke to one another like this in 2007, and some people are saying, let us hold our horses. And fellows said, no, we will not hold our horses. We will not talk. we will not get anywhere. And I think it becomes extremely worrying that the whole global community starts focusing upon us. We are not the only country that has had elections in recent times. There have been elections in New Zealand, there have been elections in Germany, there have been elections in France, there have been elections in Liberia, there have been elections just over the past few weeks or months in Rwanda. Why is it that ours become so focal? It is because we pay lip service to our democratic institutions and instruments, and we need just to pause and ask ourselves what we could do to drive ourselves safely forward.
In future, there are those who say, and some of our viewers are SMSing and saying, as much as Muluka is alluding to paying our institutions lip service, we're not giving them the democracy. There are those who feel that when it comes to the National Super Alliance, they have not given IEBC the respect it deserves as a democratic institution, that as an independent institution that should be able to run its own affairs. But how do you respond to that?
The IEBC itself has come out and spoken and said we are actually not able. When somebody comes and declares his own deficiency in public, what more are you supposed to do? The chairman, who is the national,
they've told political players to stay away.
The chairman is the presidential returning officer. The returning officer, the person who is supposed to tell us this is our president-elect. When
maybe saying is that I don't know what lies ahead of me, because these guys have become unpredictable. I'm prosecuting this now. I think the Chabuka should be given a chance also to operate within the same environment we have, because this environment, this political environment, has been so much polluted by NASA to an extent it's becoming toxic now. And that is what is actually
a section of former legislators, including your former area member of parliament, Martha Karua, are calling for dialogue. They are asking for both sides to sit down and find the way forward. Over the weekend, you were quoted saying that they should mind their own business.
No. What I say that they should have dialogue, but the first dialogue is in the ballot. We got votes. So satisfy the needs of the Supreme Court and the Constitution.
What do you think is giving them?
But nobody has stopped.
What do you think is giving them the? What do you think is giving them? Where are they coming from when they are making this statement? Kabando or Honorable Kabando, Honorable Kabogo, Honorable Karua. Where are they coming from?
I don't know
who are allies.
I don't know where they are coming from. And there's none of them except especially Kabogo and Mother Karua. Those are people I've been speaking to. In fact, I remember calling Kabad one day after the August 8th election, asking that what can you do ahead, and he had an answer to me. So when he comes out and makes a singular pronouncement as himself, not even representing a broader interest, we are not involved in that interest is representing. So what he is saying is this: dialogue is good, and we are going to be the first proponents of dialogue. But that dialogue will start after 26th of October, whereby Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta compete, and one of them become president. Whoever becomes president is going to be the leader of the dialogue that will come after that. This country is bigger than NASA. It's bigger than Jubilee. We cannot preserve this country as if it was meant for some 2-3 people to become president. As Kabage said, the biggest stakeholders in this country are the poorest of the poor. As it is now, we are working backwards.
Let me allow
one sentence. We are working backwards.
You are eating his time.
Yes. Okay, fine.
If I can contribute this, although this is best suited to these two politicians, but just like interpreting the Constitution, our Constitution 2010 at Article 1, in fact, starts with Article 1. Article 1 talks about the sovereignty of the people of Kenya. So the Constitution places a lot of emphasis on the sovereignty of the people of Kenya. The power lies with the people of Kenya to choose their leaders, to choose their president. Now, the situation we are in is that looks like one side feels marginalized because of this issue of numbers. Because as it is, the only way you can get power is through the people. And so if you don't have the numbers, you can't get power.
How do you mean?
Let me just finish.
Can you be a bit more specific?
Yeah,
I mean, it looks this way, that as long as your numerical strength is a bit down, then you cannot get.
You're talking about NASA, just for the benefit of
I'm not talking about NASA.
I want you to clarify.
Kindly allow me to respond. Allow me to finish. I'm actually talking about.
Hold on,
allow me to finish.
Hold on, let's get a clarification. Are you talking about NASA?
No, I'm not talking about NASA. In my own book, and I released it, called Trailblazer, I have dedicated a whole section to what I think I want for this country. I've argued in that book and said, looks like certain ethnic minorities, like where I come from, the Ilchamus, how will you be a president? If I'm a good leader, I have good ideas, I actually predict issues better than most of those guys who are in power now. But because of my ethnicity, how will I be president? And I proposed in my book, Trailblazer, I said, I think it's time we look at our systems and see whether we move from this polarizing voting system to a parliamentary system. That's my proposal, because I was looking at certain ethnic minorities, not about NASA, the way you are looking at things like that. And so the agitation now, putting into context, the agitation by NASA that we are not participating, is because they are already sensing defeat. And they are forcing, they are trying to force a dialogue. What is that dialogue for? Dialogue to say, include us in.
Okay, Muluka, go ahead.
Absolutely not. And when I pick up his book, the first thing I will do is to go to the index. I hope it has an index.
Yeah, of course. It's a nice book.
And the first word I will look for is Tiati.
As a publisher.
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. The first thing I will look for is Tiati constituency. And I will want to see what he has said.
That's Baringo South, not Tiati.
What he has said about how he read the presidential election results, because they were read by none other than himself.
It is all is there.
2013. And where the numbers that he pronounced for Uhuru Kenyatta were more than 3 times the registered voters in that constituency.
No, that was an error, and it was corrected. Don't rely on that. It was an error by one.
You're talking about numbers, and those numbers were used.
No, there was an error in Tiati.
Let him finish, and I'll give
a very serious statement. That error. No, that statement is so serious. I think you give the a chance to say when it's corrected or not.
By the way,
wind up.
There is a record.
Let him.
No, it's not to. It's to correct that.
Okay, pronounce.
Yeah.
He corrected.
Hang on.
It was corrected.
Barak, allow me to give letter.
That wasn't me, by the way.
Hang on.
By the way, that wasn't me.
Barak, allow me to give letter 30 seconds to respond.
Exactly.
Then you carry on.
Yeah. It is erroneous for my friend Barak, by the way, to insinuate about Tiati, where one of our commissioners read the numbers which were erroneous. And we later on realized, and in the final data, that was corrected. So, Barak, you can't go on to that. That is 2013.
Fair enough. Barak, go ahead.
Yeah, you know there's such a thing as invigorating people. You create a certain untruth, okay, and you use it, and you make the pronouncements and the announcements. What does it matter that you go back and say that we have corrected? When I read his book, the first thing I will do is to go to the index, and I will look at Tiati. I will check whether this correction that they are talking about.
He said they've made the correction.
Is admitted.
So carry on with
They talk about their own flaws and mistakes. But there's something very telling here, that you get an attitude, that there is an attitude already that these ones are going to lose. How do you determine that these ones are already going to lose? What instruments have you used? What apparatus have you used to determine that these ones are already going to use? I remember that this was the commission whose chair referred to a candidate as a perennial loser, even before he conducted the elections. So you cannot have...
It is also not correct, because that was something that was discussed later between the commission chair and Raila Odinga, and it was resolved, because it was not the person who made that statement.
I think on that note, it's time for us to take a break. We're not discussing the 2013 election. We have an election in 3 days, and that's what we need to focus on, and that's my message to the panelists. The audience series, the next step. We'll be right back.